if you have a family, and I'm being a little bit sarcastic on this, you know, I mean, like you have siblings and you have parents and you own real estate, keep watching this video. Keep watching this video if you want to learn about more about protecting, you know, the real estate from a legal standpoint in the event of a worst case scenario where one of the family members passes away. All right, I'm here with Debbie Lowe. Hey, Debbie.
Hi, Mario.
Thanks for joining me.
Thanks for having me.
Awesome, awesome. So your official title is estate planning and probate attorney?
Yes.
Awesome,
I have
awesome.
Yeah, I have a master's in estate planning from the University of Miami.
Cool, cool. And you also live here in Miami?
Yes, I do.
All
Been
right,
here for over 30 years.
So listen, what we're going to talk about today is basically, you know, when in family situations where there's, you know, there's children and there's parents, and then, you know, a reality of life, right? You know, people pass away. That's happened, right? How is it that, from a legal standpoint, how is it that, you know, what do people need to do from a legal standpoint so that way when one person is no longer, you know, on earth, you know, the remaining survivors can make decisions on real estate? That's the topic of the conversation, right?
Well, the most important thing is how they own the real estate.
Okay.
So we have different types of ownership of the real estate. Okay, you can, if you own it in your name alone and you're the 100% owner, when you die, it's going to have to go through probate unless it's in a revocable trust. Okay. And what probate really is the way to transfer through the courts the property from your name to your family members, whether you have a will or if you don't have a will, the state of Florida has written a will for you. And basically the state of Florida will says it goes to your spouse, your children, or if you don't have any of those, to your next nearest family member, which would be your parents or your siblings or your nieces and nephews. Whoever's your next closest family member would be who would get the property. But a probate does take time. I mean, it's not that if I died today that my family members could get it even within a month. It takes generally anywhere from 6 months on upwards in Florida to probate an estate.
And it's expensive too.
And transfer, and it is expensive. Yeah, you have to hire an attorney. You have court costs, and that's, you know, and then if you have a huge estate where you're paying estate taxes, that will even take longer because you've got to get estate tax clearance from the federal government. Now we're talking a huge estate in this situation because right now, as long as you're a U.S. resident or citizen, your exemption is $11.8 million. If you are not a U.S. resident, meaning that you don't have a green card, your exemption is only $60,000. So for people who are not U.S. residents, if you own any type of real estate, generally it's more than $60,000, and you're looking to pay an estate tax, and it's going to be a huge estate tax you're looking at.
That's a pretty big tax bill.
Yeah, that's a very big tax bill.
So, I mean, there's, you know, from talking before, there's 3 different types of ownerships for real estate, right?
Correct.
All right. Okay.
The 3 types of ownerships are: 1, tenants in common, meaning that if you own it with somebody else, okay, and you just have both of your names on the deed, then you own it as tenants in common. You own 50% and that person owns 50%. And when you die, your 50% has to go through probate that we talked about before.
Okay, just so under tenants in common, it has to go to probate for the other party to have a say on what to do on that asset.
No, it may not be the other party who would have a say. It would follow then either your will, or it would follow the intestate law, the Florida law, as to who would inherit from you. So if you and I own, since we're not related, property, okay, my 50% would go to my family members. It wouldn't go to you. Okay.
Gotcha.
But let's say, but if
You and I are married.
Yeah. But if we were married and we owned it, then we would own it as tenants in common. I mean, sorry, as tenants by the entireties, meaning that as
Okay.
husband and wife, and that automatically then passes to you.
Gotcha.
If
Okay.
and then the third way of owning, and the tenants by the entireties is only for husband and wife. Nobody else can use tenants by the entirety. The third way of owning it is as joint tenants with right of survivorship. So let's say you and I own property together, okay? And, you know, I said, you know, Mario, when I die, I want you to have this property because you've been managing this property and everything else and all. And so I wanted to go to you. If I put it as joint tenants with right of survivorship, it would automatically pass to you.
Okay.
Okay. I could do the same thing. Let's say I own it with one of my siblings, or if I own it with and I wanted to go to them, or I own it with my children. That's when I would use joint tenants with right of survivorship, so that it would automatically pass to the survivor.
Okay. Okay.
And
okay.
it would work the opposite way too. If you and I own that property as joint tenants with right of survivor, and you died first, it becomes mine.
Uh-huh. Okay. Okay.
It wouldn't go to your family members. So it works both ways.
Okay. And so then the typical for a couple that just get married, for example, then what's the typical type of ownership position?
If they just typically got married, then they would want to own it as tenants by the entirety, as husband and wife.
Okay.
Except if it's the house they're living in.
Okay. So tenants by entirety.
Right.
Okay. One person passes away, the other spouse gets
it.
Complete control and ownership of the property.
Correct. And they don't have to go to court, and they don't have to do anything else, really. It automatically becomes theirs upon presentation of a death certificate, because we have to prove that the person died.
Gotcha. Now, let me paint you another picture. Then what about then, let's say, God forbid, my wife passes away. I'm the only surviving spouse, and I have children.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make sure that, if I pass away, that my children have a say on the real estate without having to go to probate.
Right. Well, in that situation, and because I know you have minor children, we don't want to pass the real estate to minor children because they can't sell until they're at least 18 years old. What we would want you to do is to create a revocable trust and retitle the asset, the real estate, into that trust, so that the trust owns it. And under the terms of the trust, what it would say is, when I die, I leave my real estate to my 3 children, and they should share it equally.
And that's because they're underage.
And that's because one is because they're underage, but you may also want to do it that same way, even if they are all 18, but let's say they're young, they're 18, 20, 21, and I've got 5 pieces of real estate. I may not want them at that age to all own it in their own names, because I may feel that they're not old enough to manage all of the real estate. Maybe I want somebody else to manage it for them. Maybe I want one of my siblings who are helping them because they're still in college and everything, to help them manage it. So I would want to name somebody to be able to manage it for them, and that would be the trustee of the trust.
The trustee of the trust. Okay, gotcha. Okay. And well, let me paint you another scenario then. What if, the same scenario where, let's say I'm still alive, right? My children were in there, but then I get married again.
Right.
Okay. And then let's say down the road, I pass away, right? My new spouse is, I had already married, right? We got married, right? But then I pass away. So there's my spouse and my children, right? Which basically is a stepmom or the stepdad and the children, right?
Right.
And, and how would it work so that the real estate, in the event that the family wants the real estate to stay with the children with, you know, as opposed to with the new spouse, which is the stepmom or the stepdad.
All right. In that situation, what I would suggest you do is put the real estate into the trust.
Okay.
Into a
okay.
trust. Right.
Gotcha. So even though I get married, I have a new spouse, that there's that wall of protection that all the real estate stays with my children.
Correct. And in that trust, you can also provide for your new spouse. Let's say it's basically all rental property. What you want is to make sure she has enough money to live off of the rent on it. What you could say is, while she's alive, she gets the rental money from there, and then when she dies, the ownership goes to your children. So
a new marriage by itself doesn't override these documents, these legal process that we're talking about right now.
It does not override these documents unless it's your homestead. Homestead laws in Florida are very strong and protecting you.
Okay, so what we just talked about doesn't apply to primary homes, like if I'm living in that property.
Right. If you're living in that property in the state of Florida, unless you have a prenuptial or postnuptial agreement that says the spouse waives their right to that property, in Florida, the surviving spouse has the right to either live in the property for the rest of their life, which we call a life estate, or they can elect to take 1/2 ownership. And it doesn't matter what 1/2 ownership.
So even though there's that trust that trust that we spoke about.
Correct. That it overrides that.
But then hold on.
It overrides your trust. It overrides your will. It overrides any other document you have, but it only applies to your home in that situation.
But you said 50%. So if I remarried and there's that trust, then my new spouse only has right to 50% of the asset?
Correct. To 50% of that house, of the home, yes.
The other 50% belongs to my children.
Correct. The other half would belong to your children.
Okay. So basically the children and the new spouse would have to agree on what happens to that property.
Yes, they would have to agree to what happens to that property.
I know we're talking very, very exciting topics.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but you know what? It's the reality of life. You know, I mean, obviously you do this for a living. I mean, I'm in real estate. You know, we deal with this all the time, and it's the reality of life. You know, people get married, people get divorced, people pass away. You know, it's crazy. It's crazy, and you know, this is a necessary evil, right?
It is. It is really an item that people don't think about, and it's something that they need to plan for. I mean, and it doesn't matter whether you're married, you have children. If you own any type of real estate or any type of property, you really need to plan to try and avoid going to court, because it's a long process. I mean, hey, I love it when people don't do it, because that's how I earn my living. But you know, my job is basically
it's profitable for you, right?
Right, it's a lot more profitable for me to do it this way. But you know, I mean, but my job also is to help them, if they come in and plan before it, to avoid having to go to court, because nobody wants to wait 6 months, a year, 2 years before they get the property and can do anything with it. You know, if somebody dies, they may need the money, they may need, you know, they want to clear up and move on with their life. You know, come in to see me, and then me telling you, hey, sorry, but you know, you got to wait at least 6 months, generally a year, maybe 2 years before everything gets cleared up. It's not the easiest time during your life at that point, and it prolongs the process.
Yeah.
So
yeah, and the expense.
And so you know, it's important for them to think about it and to not say, okay, I'm not going to die, because we don't know when we're going to die. You know, we need to plan from now to try and avoid probate, and a revocable trust is one way of doing it. Now, if I only own one piece of property,
you know, I was going to ask you that next. You would even, I mean, what about that one? Yeah, like, right, I was going to ask you that, like, somebody that owns one property. I mean, that would have, I mean, this advice applies that even to that one person, right?
Right. I mean, it still applies to that one to them the same way if they only own one piece of property. But
yeah, because a lot of people would usually think like, oh, well, I only own this house, you know, there's not much to it. I mean, but it can become a cumbersome process, even though it's just one property.
Yes, it can. I mean, you have the same thing. I mean, how am I going to give it to your spouse, your children, or anything if it's only in your name?
Right.
It's the same process. But if you only own one piece of property, maybe what you want to think about is, instead of a revocable trust, is something we call an enhanced life estate deed, or a ladybird deed. And basically, it's like writing a beneficiary designation. It says, while I'm alive, I can do anything I want with my own house. But when I die, this is who I want to inherit it without having to go to court.
Gotcha. Okay. Awesome. There's stuff that you're saying that I didn't even, you know, you need this refreshers, but I didn't even know. So it's awesome. Great information. Debbie, if somebody needs your help, how do they reach you?
Oh, they can call me. My telephone number is 305-596-2332, or they can reach me by email at dlowellaw@bellsouth.net. So it's dlowelaw@bellsouth.net.
And if they would go to your office, where your offices are, South Miami, is it?
I'm right on the edge of Kendall. Yeah.
Okay.
South Miami
Awesome.
area, right by Dadeland. So yeah, I'm off of Galloway Road and Miller. So, and I'd be happy to talk to them, you know, and figure, and we can always work something out.
Awesome. And likewise, if you're watching this video, if you're in a situation where that involves, you know, I mean, the planning may involve, you know, the sale of real estate, my cell phone is 305-305-1535. I'm here to help on the sales side. Debbie can definitely help you out on the legal side of planning. Debbie, thank you a million. The information you've shared, it's very insightful, and you know, it's a very morbid subject, but you know, everybody goes through it, right? That owns real estate, you know.
Everybody goes through it. You know, not only if they own real estate, but if they own anything, they need to plan.
Right.
It is important that you think about it. But you know, from a real estate point of view, that's the one that takes the longest to do. Yeah,
of course. I mean, it's for most people is like their and for most people is their largest transaction, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Awesome.
That's their big transaction.
Debbie, thank you a million, and let's do this again soon.
Terrific. I had a great time doing this. Yeah. So let's talk about this soon and do it again. Okay. Thanks,
awesome.
Mario.